Hello, my name is Lee Bartlett, and I'm one of the officers for Psi Beta. And tonight I have the honor of introducing two amazing gentlemen who come from an even more amazing organization. David Stempfle and Bob Wallace are here today from Southwest Kids Cancer Foundation. This organization puts on a yearly summer camp for kids who have had or have cancer and their siblings. Childhood cancer often robs children of a lot of important childhood experiences, and this camp thrives to give some of that childhood back. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers tonight, or as I more affectionately call them, Steumpfle and Uncle Bob.
Thank you. All right. Well, good evening, Mesa Community College. You know, if this was a self-help seminar, we would tell you that in the next hour or so, you'll find the recipe to become the person that you've always dreamed of, successful, respected, and content. We'd promise to show you how to beat the odds, gain confidence, and achieve a new perspective to conquer life's biggest obstacles. That sounds pretty good, right?
Of course, though, we'd also have to tell you the secret ingredients that hold the recipe together are: number one, you have to have cancer. And number two, you have to have it early in life. Woohoo! Right? Okay? Although I see your faces out here. Why are they so grim? Looks like someone just spit in your food.
Sure. None of us want to get cancer, and many have already blown through that early in life clause. But don't worry. You need not be young to learn from children, and you don't have to have cancer to benefit from the experiences of those who have.
Whew, sweet. I'm so glad to hear that, Bob.
Now, you may question what gives us the authority to make such claims. What are our qualifications, credentials? Who are you even? Did you even go to school?
As Lee mentioned, my name is David Stempler, and yes, within our camp community, I'm affectionately known as Stumpy. My education and professional life has revolved mainly around politics and even higher education. I actually began, though, my time volunteering with children that have cancer back when I was in college, back on the East Coast. I went to Penn State University, and I was actually a dancer in one of the largest student-run philanthropies in the nation called the Penn State Dance Marathon. You may have heard of it as Thon, if you will. In any case, since then, I actually went on to work for the American Cancer Society, raising money there. And at the same time, I actually began volunteering in my spare time with a pediatric oncology camp, which you're going to hear a lot more about tonight. And as Lee mentioned earlier, after 20 years of volunteering for this pediatric oncology camp, I've recently been hired as their interim camp director. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go tonight, too. And what about you, Bob?
I'm Bob Wallace, Uncle Bob at camp. By the end of high school, I was just mature enough to realize that I was too immature to attend college. Would have been fun, but not necessarily productive. Instead, I worked as a radio disc jockey, and then finally got around to going to nursing school, and I eked my way through the RN boards. But that was it. I was done. I was in my mid-20s by then. My learning days were behind me. To quote Alice Cooper, school was out forever. Or so I thought. Then, in 1994, my true education began as a brand new volunteer at Arizona Camp Sunrise and Sidekicks. When I first heard of the camp, it seemed like a ridiculous amount of fun, something I could get behind. I discovered that it is a ridiculous amount of fun, plus overtones of connection and empathy. I discovered a kinship with like-minded individuals who believe that a child robbed of their youth by cancer is entitled to a fun-packed summer camp experience. Bottom line, I found my camp family, my campily.
And I also first attended camp in 2002. And since then, I've actually had countless experiences with some amazing children, which we'll share some of those stories along our journey together tonight. And these experiences actually rejuvenate my soul every single year and allow me to help kids going through something that no child should ever have to: cancer.
And so commenced our real schooling, bona fide life lessons that have guided us through the years. So fast forward a metric buttload of years, we've loved, laughed, and lost and found so many life lessons and experiences that we become the people that we are today. We're far from perfect, but I, for one, am a more accomplished person than before I met the children of Arizona Camp Sunrise.
And the kids have changed us. And they can change your life too, I promise you. Through Arizona Camp Sunrise, we've been privileged to know hundreds of children battling cancer. We can attest to their transformations into child superheroes. We've witnessed them parlay their tragedy into strength and achievement. The children's wisdom, it's simple, it's profound, it's personal, yet it's universal. And they can help you circumnavigate perplexing times, and fortunately, you don't have to walk in their hospital slippers to benefit from their knowledge.
Okay, so we're not gurus, and this is not a self-help seminar. We're not cooks, and there is no magic recipe. What this is, however, is a window into the lives of children battling cancer, and it's an opportunity to gain their perspective without taking on their disease.
We're here to show you how the children of Arizona Camp Sunrise will alter your perspective on childhood cancer. They'll change the way you respond to day-to-day annoyances, and they'll reshape your views on life and how to live it.
The kids have much to teach, and we, the healthy, have much to learn.
Now, it's my hope that we all know that cancer's bad. It's the evil that lurks in the shadows, the monster under the bed. But how much do most of us really understand about the disease? Maybe an overview would be appropriate. A Cancer 101, if you will. Bob.
Sure. Cancer involves cells growing out of control. They're renegade cells that have the ability to invade and grow. They take on abnormal sizes and shapes, they ignore their normal boundaries, and they destroy neighboring cells. Our entire bodies are made up of cells, over 10 million cells. Where things get wonky is when one or more young cell loses its built-in ability to respond to normal chemical messages. Those messages tell it to mature and to die. Instead, they reproduce repeatedly, replicating the same abnormalities over and over and over. These are cancer cells, and they're out of control. Often they reproduce so fast that they need to spread into new areas or metastasize. They can invade other tissues, bone marrow, or blood. Sometimes they grow into tumors, which are clusters of abnormal cells. To complicate things further, cancer is not a single disease. It's a whole group of diseases, and that can be confusing. Each type of cancer is a unique disease with its own properties and actions, and each requires distinct approaches for treatment.
Now, you might wonder if cancer is common in children. Fortunately, it's not. For pure odds, it can be compared to winning the lottery. And whoever did in Arizona yesterday, congrats. Okay. But it's not very likely at all. Childhood cancer is considered a rare disease. For instance, the odds of a child developing a neuroblastoma, which is a solid tumor cancer of the sympathetic nervous system, is less than 1 in 100,000.
Sure. At camp, we're surrounded by tons and tons of children with cancer. But let's round up a random sampling of non-camp kids under the age of 18. Now you, me, and all these kids are heading to Disneyland. We'll find you a great seat on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Then we'll fill the rest of the ship with the random kids from the nation. Now, you will set sail, and once you return, you can just stay seated. We're going to fill in with additional kids of a random sampling, and you sail again. And when that completes, we'll do it again and again and again. So by now you're dizzy, nauseated, and hoping to never hear another sea shanty. But we're not done. Far from it, actually. For one child with a neuroblastoma to join you on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, you would theoretically have to set sail a total of 4,166 times. That's a lot of yo-ho-hoing and a whole lot of non-alcoholic rum.
Now, the odds of a child getting a rhabdomyosarcoma, and Bob was very thrilled that I had to say that, is even less likely than a neuroblastoma. Rhabdomyosarcoma is a form of cancer affecting the soft tissue, and the chances of a child getting it is less than 1 in 200,000. So it's not too likely at all.
Let's head back to Disneyland. This time, you'll need to stay seated for over 8,000 spins on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. That's for the statistical likelihood that one of those kids would have the disease. All those kids, and only one with cancer. That's not bad, statistically speaking. With those kinds of odds, what's the big deal about kids and cancer?
Well, let's ask Sabrina. Sabrina was born 2 months premature and only weighed 3 pounds. At 6 months of age, she was diagnosed with a neuroblastoma. Her tiny body housed a tumor that weighed 2 pounds. Not only did she not pick the lucky lottery ticket, but she was also dealt the cancer card. And honestly, that made for quite a big deal. Or we can actually ask Natalie. At 9.5, Natalie was an active little gymnast. Then she was told she had rhabdomyosarcoma and would have to undergo surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. To Natalie and her family, that was a huge deal.
Though the chances of these girls getting cancer was statistically low, they got it anyway. Isn't that just like a child to ignore the odds? The reality of it is that 43 children in the United States will be diagnosed with cancer today. Tomorrow, another 43 children will be diagnosed with cancer. And every single day, 43 more children will be diagnosed with cancer. It adds up to over 15,000 children each year in the U.S. and over 300,000 children worldwide. With a cancer diagnosis, everything changes. And the toothpaste is not going back in the tube. Although each form of cancer is considered a rare disease, cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children under the age of 19 in the U.S. And if one of those children is your child or a child you love, it's a big deal.
Now, as for Sabrina, that one child in 100,000, or Natalie, the one child in 200,000, I know you're wondering what happened to them. Don't worry. They're both fine. Both of their illnesses happened years ago. Both are productive adults. Both are mothers. Both are living lives that are active and fulfilling. But best of all, they're not alone. Far from it. There are tens of thousands of children who have done the same. Each has a unique story to tell, but all share a common bond. They are childhood cancer survivors. And I got to tell you, that's a pretty impressive addition to one's resume, to one's life's resume.
Each form of cancer is its own individual disease, and each one of them is considered a rare disease. Yet, 300,000 children are newly diagnosed each and every year. It makes you wonder how long this has been going on.
Well, Bob, maybe it's time for some cancer highlights in world history.
Fair enough. It was around 400 BC when Hippocrates, the big daddy of modern medicine, first used the word carcinoma to describe tumors. Hence, the term cancer was coined. Leukemia was discovered in the 1850s, but has been identified in human remains as far back as 5000 BC. Radiation therapy exploded in the 1900s, and Franklin D. Roosevelt approved the establishment of the National Cancer Institute in 1937. Chemical warfare agents used in World War II became the first chemotherapy drugs used on adults, while at that time, children with cancer received only palliative care. The goal was not to heal the child, but just to keep them comfortable. It wasn't until the mid-50s that pediatric pathologists discovered chemo drugs could be used on children also, and a consortium was established to focus on childhood cancer research. In 1971, President Nixon declared the war on cancer, and funds were poured into trials of new drugs. That decade also brought us the CT, MRI, and PET scans. The National Cancer Institute designated 20 hospitals as dedicated cancer centers, and leukemia, along with other childhood cancers, began to look survivable. By the 1980s, many hospitals were performing bone marrow transplants, and outcomes improved even more for kids with cancer. The 80s also brought us the first childhood oncology camps, including Arizona Camp Sunrise.
Now we're talking, Bob. Can we talk about Camp Sunrise now?
Not just yet. We're still talking about cancer and statistics. Now let's look at leukemia. Leukemia is a cancer of the bone marrow and blood, and it's the most common childhood cancer. Acute lymphocemic leukemia, ALL, accounts for 3/4 of the leukemias in children. Now, in the 1960s, if your child had ALL, they had a less than 10% chance of being cured. 90% of the time, they would not survive. If your child had ALL in the 1970s, their survival rate jumped to 58%. And today, the children have a 90% survival rate. Childhood cancer is considered a modern success story of medical research, and our triumphs and innovations in treating cancer have been nothing less than extraordinary.
Excellent and hugely encouraging. Now, some of you may be math people. I am not, but I do love statistics like that.
I've never personally taken a course in statistics, but I've heard that 60% of the time statistics are 100% correct, and I think it's probably maybe true. But let's face it, numbers are finicky, but they can be persuaded to say most anything you want. So ponder this. Elvis Presley died in 1977. At that time, there were about 170 people impersonating him. Now, that number has grown since then, and in the year 2000, Elvis impersonators numbered 85,000. So that data allows you to calculate the growth factor for Elvis impersonators.
So, if I'm doing this correctly, at that growth rate, statistically speaking, right now, 1 in 3 of the world's population is an Elvis impersonator?
Exactly. Aren't statistics fun? Even better, let's jump forward to 2043, when literally everyone on Earth will be an Elvis impersonator. Okay, so let's drop the statistical gymnastics, the fuzzy thinking, the fake logic. Just moments ago, we told you that the most prevalent childhood cancer is about 90% curable. Now, that's true, statistically speaking. But statistics are not always the same as real life. A parent brought this to my attention when she said, if your kid has cancer, they're either going to make it or they're not going to make it. She did have a point. Statistics are BS. What matters is what happens to your child. The challenges each of these children go through are like running hurdles in the Himalayas. Or possibly the hurdles are the Himalayas. Choose your own metaphor. The challenges are monumental, ludicrous, and anything but fair.
So true. You're absolutely right, Bob. But what actually happened to us talking about the uplifting side of this discussion? You took us from Elvis to despair in 20 seconds?
Hang on a second. Good news is coming.
Well, we already talked about how unlikely it is for a child to be afflicted with cancer. And for those who are, how likely it is that they'll be cured, right?
Yep.
And we talked about the advancements and successes in developing childhood cancer medications from the 50s through the 80s, right?
Uh-huh.
But then what happened?
Well, then the 90s happened, and then the aughts, and the 2010s, and now the 2020s. I'd like to tell you that in the last 30-some years, the government threw all kinds of money at finding a cure for childhood cancer. And the pharmaceutical companies enlisted their best and brightest to develop new and better drugs. I'd also like to tell you that researchers rolled out new meds and upgrades faster than the iPhone, and that their technological advancements made the Tesla organization look like a junior varsity pickleball team.
Sounds like there's a big button there, though.
But it's just not true. Look at it this way. If the United States government and the drug companies were to post their relationship status with childhood cancer, they'd likely go with, it's complicated. And if childhood cancer were to post its relationship status with the U.S. government and drug companies, they'd say, who?
You told us about children with acute lymphocemic leukemia, the most prevalent form of childhood cancer. And you told us how they had less than a 10% chance of being cured in the 1960s and a 90% chance of being cured today, right?
Right.
So this was because of all the major new drugs developed, right?
No, not right.
No?
Far from it. Of the drugs most commonly used for the treatment of ALL today, 4 of them were developed in the 1950s, 3 in the 60s, and 3 in the 70s. Since then, 0, zip, none. In the past 40 years, no drugs have been developed specifically for treating childhood ALL.
Hold on, Bob. Cancer is the leading cause of death by disease for children in the U.S. And ALL is the most prevalent childhood cancer. And over the last 40 years, 0 drugs have been developed to treat it? Why?
That's a great question, and we'll get to it in a second. Research America put out a report showing that from 2013 to 2016, there was a 20.6% growth in medical health research and development. That's R&D spending. Data shows that in the United States, we spent over $171 billion on medical health R&D in 2016 alone.
That sounds like good news.
Yeah. Report also noted that all that R&D money actually comprised only a small fraction of the overall healthcare spending. They estimated the total amount of healthcare spending in the U.S. reached $3.5 trillion.
All right, now we're talking. Billions and trillions. That's a whole lot of money to throw at serious diseases like childhood cancer, right?
Unfortunately, no. Again, not right. The numbers do not translate down to investment in childhood cancer research at all. Childhood cancer research depends almost entirely on public funding. Now, what's that mean? It means childhood cancer research relies on donations and nonprofit organizations running fundraisers to subsidize the serious business of preventing our children from dying of cancer. It's the old bake sale and car wash model. Truth is, in the past 20 years, 228,000 children in the U.S. have been newly diagnosed with cancer. And in that same time, only 1 new drug has been developed for a pediatric cancer of any type. By comparison, 190 new treatments were developed and approved for adult cancers in the same time period.
Well, I'll be honest with you, this presentation isn't quite what we thought, is it? I was hoping we'd talk about the positive aspects of children surviving cancer and what they can teach us.
We should, shouldn't we? You know, I was at a COCA-I conference. That's the Childhood Oncology Camping Association International. Conference was in Baltimore, and Dr. Peter Adamson was one of the keynote speakers. Dr. Adamson's board certified in pediatric hematology, oncology, and clinical pharmacology. He's the chair of the Children's Oncology Group, COG, and that's a big deal.
Now, back in the 1950s, we had the National Cancer Institute. And in 1955, they formed their very first cooperative group focused on childhood leukemia research. Their collaborative research was a huge success and spawned the establishment of other groups. By the end of the 1990s, there were 4 different groups focused on childhood cancer. Then in 2000, the 4 pediatric cancer groups voluntarily merged into one single group, the Children's Oncology Group, or COG.
COG is the world's largest organization devoted exclusively to childhood and adolescent cancer research, and it's devoted to the development of new treatments and cures. COG unites over 9,000 pediatric cancer specialists in approximately 230 children's hospitals, universities, and cancer centers. Each pediatric cancer center uses the same protocols and best practices, and each one feeds the results into one shared database. It's the true spirit of collaboration.
And Dr. Adamson is an internationally recognized leader in pediatric cancer drug development. His laboratory research focuses on the clinical pharmacology of new drugs for childhood cancer.
Bottom line, when it comes to childhood cancer research, drug development, and treatment, COG is Batman's secret crime lab. And Dr. Peter Adamson, he's Alfred Thaddeus Crane Pennyworth.
Who?
Seriously? Alfred. Batman's highly intelligent and resourceful butler. He oversees Wayne Manor, takes care of the high-tech, next-gen technology. That Alfred.
Okay, I think I got it.
So I spoke to Dr. Adamson after his keynote address. I complimented him on his presentation, wisely avoided any comic book butler analogies, and I asked him my number one nagging question. Why? I asked him, why are there no new cancer drugs being developed for children? He told me, fortunately, all childhood cancers are considered rare or ultra-rare diseases, and there are no great private sector business models for doing that. His response was concise and pragmatic. It's basically an economic challenge. There's simply not enough money in developing new drugs for treating pediatric cancer. That sounded reasonable. Not. Seriously, I asked him, drug companies let children die because there isn't enough money to be made by not letting them die? He said, basically, yes. Dr. Adamson chose his words carefully. He said industry has a much larger footprint for adult cancers, so they're not as reliant on collaborative efforts as we are with childhood cancer. Now, this is unsettling, to say the least, but he did soften the blow. However, he said, the landscape is changing for the good. Legislative initiatives that have come down the pike, including the recent RACE Act, they may help increase the amount of research for new drugs. I asked him, but how do you and I and we not become disillusioned and cynical? He told me, it continues to be a challenge, but we're fortunate. Every generation we've continued to make progress, and that progress includes finding children with certain cancers that can be cured with less therapy to avoid some of the long-term side effects. That helped. He went on to say, we absolutely continue to make progress. Any doctor who's been in the field for more than 10 years sees children that they're able to cure today that they wouldn't have been able to cure 10 years ago. I asked him which new therapy he felt was the most potential. He was quick. He said cellular therapies that target the cancers with minimal effects on the healthy tissues. He went on to explain the CAR-Ts are the top of the list for pediatric cancers. Broadly speaking, immuno-oncology is still early in our knowledge, and real advances are still to come in that field. Now, that's what I wanted to hear. A distinguished guy who knows what he's talking about. Right?
Right. But I'll be honest with y'all. I am so glad that academics and statistics and smart talk is behind us now. We can actually talk about what we really know, the children of Camp Sunrise. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about one of the campers that we have here. And as we do that, because the academics and the smart talk is over, I think Bob and I are going to get just a little bit more comfortable here. So as I talk, we're just going to get a little bit more comfortable. So I want to tell you a little bit about one of my former campers, Kimmy. And she's up here in the left-hand picture on the right side of it in the black shirt. Okay. I met Kimmy when she was 11 years old. It was her first time at Arizona Camp Sunrise. And she was coming off of her cancer diagnosis and treatment, and that included the amputation of her right leg. And with chemotherapy and radiation, as an 11-year-old girl, if you can't tell, yes, we're very much about cancer sucks. And so when I first met Kimmy, because of the surgery, the chemotherapy, and the radiation, she was bald, she was bloated, and She was in a wheelchair at that point in time because she was only a couple of months out from her amputation, and the prosthetic leg that they had given her bothered her, so she couldn't necessarily walk on it. 11 years old, little girl, bald, bloated, in a wheelchair. First time at camp. At the time we held that camp, this was in 2002, at a university in Arizona, not at our normal camp because of some massive fires that were going on in the wilderness at that point in time. And throughout the course of that week, some of the individuals and staff at the facility that we were utilizing mistook her for a young boy more than a few times. Every time that would happen, it would send her into hysterics. You could ask her, how'd you lose your leg? Why are you bald? Tell you everything you wanted to know about her cancer. Get called a little boy, instant tears, instant hysterics. Totally understandable. And so, as part of our camp experience, on the second to last night, we hold a formal dinner dance. And at the dance that night, Kimmy came there, and all the kids, counselors, were in the middle of the dance floor, except for Kimmy. She was off on the side, sitting in her wheelchair, clutching a water bottle, just kind of petrified to do anything. I saw this, and then I saw a fellow counselor say, well, I'm not just going to let you sit off on the side, and started to push Kimmy forward in her wheelchair. Kimmy was having none of it. With her one good leg, we kept doing this. If you ever try to do that with someone in a wheelchair, well, that's going to stop the wheelchair from moving. God bless the counselor, wheeled her around backwards, took her right out, plopped her right in the middle of the dance floor, and just left her there. I watched this for about 20 seconds. 11-year-old petrified little girl sitting in the middle of a dance floor in a wheelchair, clutching her water bottle. I went up to her, right in the middle, sea of children, and I looked at her and I said, excuse me, miss, can I have this dance? And she looked at me, and I looked at her. I said, can I see your water bottle? I did that first, because she was clutching this water bottle like it was her life raft, a life preserver. I said, can I see your water bottle? And she said, why? I said, I just want to see it. And she gingerly handed it over to me, and with that, I pitched it. And if you've ever seen a movie where, things move in slow motion, you could see her reaction of like, no, as this thing, her life preserver was ditched to the side. And with that, I grabbed her hand. I said, excuse me, miss, can I have this dance? She had no idea what to say to me. Okay, so with that, I just grabbed both of her hands, and to the beat of the music, we just started doing this. To the beat. We finished the song. I kissed her hand gently, said, thank you, miss, for the dance. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of the night. And I left her in the middle of the dance floor. There was no one around her. There was no counselor holding on to her wheelchair to force her to stay there. She could have left at any moment. I kept an eye on her for the next hour and a half in that dance. Not once did she leave the dance floor. She got into it. She kept dancing with the friends that she had made throughout the course of the week. And that story goes on, and we've become friends ever since, and she's in her late 20s now, okay? Amazing woman who has come back and volunteered at Arizona Camp Sunrise. But the point of that, and why I tell you that, Kimmy has told me this many times over the years, that surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation may have cured her cancer, but it was Camp Sunrise that saved her life. Let me say that again. Camp Sunrise saved her life. The people she met, the support she got, the ongoing love that she still gets to this day saved her life. And that's really what we want to talk about tonight, is in what these children get from programs like Arizona Camp Sunrise and the life lessons that they learn throughout the course of their life. Bob.
Thank you, Stumpy. Great story. The other day, I was in line at our local Starbucks drive-thru, and I ordered my usual venti chai latte with 8 pumps, light ice, and enough cinnamon to choke a cow. Then I crept forward and got my beverage, but as I went to pay for it, the barista said, "No, person in front of you already paid for it." I said, "Huh." And she said, "Would you like to carry it on and pay for the person behind you?" I said, "Absolutely." Of course, it was one of those pay it forward things. As I left, I had my venti chai, light ice, 8 pumps, enough cinnamon to choke a cow, the way a chai is supposed to be. But I noticed my mood had really buoyed. My endorphins were jitterbugging. I laughed out loud, and I knew it was going to be a stellar day. Someone, a complete stranger, had extended a bit of kindness to me, and I, in return, did the same thing for another random stranger. How cool is that? Well, pay it forward, that's an expression for describing the beneficiary of a good deed repaying someone else instead of the original benefactor. It's been around a long time. It goes clear back to ancient Athens in a play. It was also a best-selling novel, and then it became a movie with that little guy from Sixth Sense in it. And the Pay It Forward movement and foundation helped start a ripple effect around the world. And today is April 28th. Every April 28th is official International Pay It Forward Day. It's been adopted in 80 different countries. Today's the day billed as changing the world one good deed at a time. It's said to have inspired over 5 million acts of kindness. There I was at Starbucks, number 5,000,001. Now, I don't know if it really qualifies as an epiphany, but right there in that parking lot, it dawned on me. All these years, I've been paying it forward for Haley. That's her on the right. Haley was my friend in high school. She's pretty and smart and wonderful. Unfortunately, Haley was also my introduction to childhood cancer. We were freshmen, naive and idealistic. We had big plans and ambitions to transform the world. Then one day, Haley was at a friend's house practicing some cheerleading moves. She took a tumble and hit her leg on a coffee table. That led to a doctor visit and another doctor and a hospital stay and a diagnosis of cancer, and then they cut her leg off. It all happened in the length of time it took me to tell you that. At least, that's how I remember it. I was stunned. I didn't know you could get cancer from banging your leg on an end table, which you can't. And isn't it cancer just for old people? Unfortunately, no, it's not. And why Haley? It all made zero sense. It seemed ridiculous and stupid and totally unfair, and it still seems that way today. Haley was so easy to like and easy to talk to. She spread seeds of kindness to everyone she knew. I wish I could have said or done the right thing to help her through her adversity, but I couldn't, and I didn't. I suppose it was fear that held me back. What did I really have to be afraid of? Letting myself care too deeply for someone so fragile? Setting myself up to be devastated? I don't know. But I'd never lost a friend, and I had no desire to start that process. The fear also held me back from telling Haley, or even admitting to myself, how impactful she was on my life. I didn't have the vocabulary, and I feared saying the wrong thing. Now, don't get me wrong. We had tons of laughs and good times. They just weren't to last. Doctors said that Haley would not graduate high school, but she fought through year after year. She walked across that stage with the rest of us. We were high school graduates, dauntless, diplomas in hands. Summer was finally here, and life was ripe with possibility. There I was, 18, wild and stupid. And there was a Haley, 18, and planning her own funeral. Even then, I flinched. And then it was too late. I guess the ripeness of possibility varies from person to person. In fearing Haley's death, I missed validating her life. I failed to express to her how the seeds of kindness, grace, and friendship truly affected me. It's nearly 40 years later, and I still carry that weight. Acting as a pallbearer at Haley's funeral was a devastating task and a privilege beyond comparison. But I sat there with Gene and Dude, Larry, Gary, and Terry, the other pallbearers. We all stared forward, knowing if we looked at each other, we'd fall apart. And I don't recall much about that service, other than it being excruciatingly long. But we made it through. When cued, we rose, circled her casket, lifted, and carried Haley to the hearse outside. So the next day, I returned to my 18-year-old life full of potential and adventure, but I wasn't the same. I'd lost a piece of myself that I would never regain. Haley had taught me that life is fragile and short and far from being fair. Haley left a fissure in my heart, and that was a lot of years ago. I've racked up my share of follow-up failures, but hers is the one that stuck. I still regret not finding the words to express her significance, but I've also nurtured that little breach in my heart. I've nurtured the breach and cultivated her seeds that she spread so freely, and I've become a better person out of the deal. Every day, I try to embrace Haley's spirit and give a little bit back. At camp, at Starbucks, in life, I try to pay it forward for Haley.
Thanks for sharing that, Bob. Now, from the outside, the experience of Arizona Camp Sunrise can be hard to understand. And from the inside, it can be quite hard to explain. Camp isn't one thing. It's a million little things that add up to a very big deal. It's life-changing. It's life-affirming. And for many, a lifelong connection. It is impossible to overstate how important it is to a child with cancer.
I'll admit, I'm at a challenging point in my adulthood. I'm exhilarated by summer camp and everything that it represents, yet my middle-aged back just twinges at the thought of camp. Now think about this. When I started volunteering at Arizona Camp Sunrise, none of my present-day campers were yet born. And same goes for many of my co-counselors. It's become apparent I'm an OG, original gangsta.
Yeah, no.
No?
No. I'm pretty sure OG stands for old guy.
Old guy. You're sure?
Pretty sure, Bob.
Damn.
Regardless, though, the campers of Camp Sunrise have been a huge part of our lives. They've helped us grow and mature and have radically influenced our perspective on life and how to live it. But that's enough about us.
To a child, summer camp is everything. Camp's a chance for kids to recreate themselves, to transform and restructure social hierarchies. Camp is full of firsts.
It's the first time to ride a horse.
First time to catch a fish.
First time to be so homesick you can't sleep or to never want to go home.
It's the first time to perform in front of 200 cheering fans, to skip a rock or paddle a canoe.
It's the first time to sleep in a tent or with 20 friends in one cabin.
First crush.
First crawdad caught with your bare hands.
First time to play in the snow, and first time to discover that post-shower, you still have Jell-O in your ears. So many firsts.
Frequently, however, Camp Sunrise is also a child's first time to not be singled out as the cancer kid.
You know, often when I tell people that I volunteer at a camp for kids with cancer, they say, "Oh, that must be so sad." Seriously, they say that. They don't get it.
Camp Sunrise is all about fun. We believe that a child with cancer should receive the same summer camp experience as any other kid.
Arizona Camp Sunrise was one of the world's first oncology camps, and it's been a role model for countless other camps that followed. It's a magical place in the tall pines of northern Arizona where children who have or have had cancer grow, transform, and flourish in amazing ways.
Now, sure, we have physicians and nurses on site, but camp isn't about being ill. It's not that at all. Camp Sunrise is all about fun. The premise is that cancer should not deprive a child from having the same camp experiences as any other child. It's pretty simple, it's super fun, and profound in its impact on a child's life.
A newly diagnosed child with cancer, they'll come to camp and meet other children that have been through the same thing that they have. These kids are role models for each other. That's role models that Stumpy and I could never be.
Now, Arizona Camp Sunrise was also one of the first camps to recognize the unique circumstances encountered by the brothers and sisters of cancer patients. That's why we added Sunrise Sidekicks, a camp to serve the distinct needs for those siblings. And they do have distinct needs. Typically, your survivors get all the attention. The parents, other family members, other adults, doctors, nurses, when they're in the hospital, all the attention is on them. And so the siblings kind of fall to the wayside. And they come to us with a whole host of other issues, whether they're emotional issues, they're attention-seeking, they act out, whatever that may be. But that's what we do at Arizona Camp Sunrise, and specifically Sidekicks, is provide these children with amazing experiences and the attention that they not only need but deserve. I want to share a quick story about, again, one of my former campers who was a sibling of a child with cancer. And I'd gotten to know the family, I'd gotten to know her 3 siblings as well as this particular camper for, goodness, probably 5 or 6 years, until she was about 15 years old. And then she stopped coming to camp for a variety of reasons. And it was, goodness, about 2 years ago now, when I was on Facebook one day and got a message, an instant message on Facebook from this particular camper. And it had been 7 years since I had seen this particular individual. They were now a young adult in her early 20s. And she messaged me and said, "Hi, Stumpy, it's Alyssa. I just wanted to get in contact with you, and I'm so glad I finally found you, and just want to let you know that I'm getting married. Would it be okay if I sent you an engagement announcement?" And I'm like, wow. Yes, of course, congratulations. I'd love for you to send me an engagement announcement. I mean, that was amazing to me after all this time. And I want to read you what she wrote to me next, because this kind of says it all to me from a sibling standpoint. The next thing she wrote to me was, and I quote, "Thanks for being such a healthy male figure for me as a kid. You were a big part of my childhood, and I'd love for you to be involved in my adulthood." Wow. Okay? I tell you that story because whether it's a child going through cancer, whether they're a survivor and many years out, whether they're a sibling, whether it's somebody who maybe you interact with once and they're having these particular set of circumstances occur to them, you never know the impact that you're actually going to have on a child and what will eventually come back around to you and the difference that you make in their life. And I promise you, most of the time, you won't know. If you're lucky, you'll get messages like that, and you'll know the impact that you had. But just know that every interaction you have with a child going through these types of circumstances, it matters.
To date, Arizona Camp Sunrise and Sidekicks have served well over 5,000 campers and their families. Summer camps and year-round programs are provided 100% free of charge.
The Southwest Kids Cancer Foundation is a nonprofit organization that was developed specifically with these amazing children in mind. They fund and manage our camp programs. Their vision and wisdom are what carry Arizona Camp Sunrise and Sidekicks forward. So let's do me a favor. Let's talk some more about the campers and share some more of their stories, Bob.
Good idea. My buddy Alex, he came to camp when he was 10. Now, he says counterintuitively, cancer camp's a great place for a child to leave cancer behind, if only for a week. At Camp Sunrise, cancer will fade into the background of the ordinary, allowing each child's unique attributes to emerge and shine. Alex told me, in that small world in the woods, each camper gets to be a star of something besides his or her personal medical drama. It's pretty awesome.
Now, many of these firsts from camp go on to become life lessons.
Courtney and her sister Kelsey, they were campers from most of their youth. Now, Courtney says, when I need to get myself motivated, I think about camp and the people who were there to help me through the hard times. She says it got me through some rough times years ago, and it helps me through rough times today. Courtney's currently in medical school. She says, I can't even explain it to non-camp people, but if it weren't for my cancer and for my camp, I don't think I'd be the person I am today if it weren't for the support of my campally.
Let's just take a few minutes here. I actually want to show you a video. It's actually from 2014, but it'll give you a good feel for what we're talking about when it comes to Arizona Camp Sunrise and Sidekicks.
Welcome to Arizona Camp Sunrise and Sidekicks, located outside Payson, Arizona, in the shadow of the Mogollon Rim. The first camp in Arizona for children who have or have had cancer, Camp Sunrise began in 1983. In 1988, the camp added its Sidekicks program, the only program in the state for siblings of cancer patients. The purpose of camp is to give these courageous young cancer survivors a normal camp experience. One where they aren't the kid with cancer, but just another kid having a great summer experience with their friends. And what an experience it is! For 1 week each summer, the kids of Camp Sunrise and Sidekicks enjoy non-stop activities that includes everything from archery to dodgeball, from horseback riding to, of course, Jell-O. While the activities are great, who can say no to a Jell-O war? What really drives this camp is the relationships, the ways the campers, volunteers, and families inspire each other and lift each other up. Here are some of their stories.
Hi, my name is Aaron Alvidres. I was diagnosed with spindle cell sarcoma in 1984. I came to Arizona Camp Sunrise in 1986, and I've been at this camp for 28 years. And I do it to make a difference. The impact that we make on the children's lives lasts forever, and we build amazing relationships here.
Hi, my name is Alex Prone, and I was a volunteer for Arizona Sidekicks for 3 years, and on my 4th year, I was diagnosed with brain and thyroid cancer. I come to camp not only to help my volunteer have it, but because kids, going through it firsthand, kids need a camp where they get away and where they're with children who are going through the same situations they are. People can say, I understand, but you don't really understand until you've gone through it yourself. It's a situation that has changed my life. It's not always a bad thing. Sure, there's terrible side effects, it's a terrible disease, but you get family through it, and you have a new outlook on life that I never would have had if I wasn't diagnosed.
This camp has been very, very important to her. When her father and I couldn't give her the emotional support that she needed, she had resources here at camp with all of her fellow counselors to provide her with the support that she needed to get through some of the really tough times. And many of those counselors gave my husband and I the support that we needed too. Who would have figured we needed support?
At At the age of 6, I was diagnosed with ALL T-cell leukemia. I wasn't given a shot in the arm of living. I came to camp when I was 8. It was my home away from home, the first place where people actually understood what I was going through. I returned as a counselor at the age of 22 because I knew what it meant to help kids and for them to help me. I have a home here. This is why I come to camp.
If you struggle to lose weight, you must see.
Hopefully you don't. So, hopefully that should give you a good idea about Camp Sunrise, as well as what our campers experience while there. But let's talk about some of the life lessons that these kids have taught us. Oh, uh-oh, what did I do? Well, we'll see if that comes up. It's telling me that it's unresponsive. Excellent. In any case, if that comes up, back up, we'll get to that. But I want to tell you a story, and the next slide would have actually shown a picture of one of our former campers. A young man by the name of Andrew. You may have seen him in that video. He was the camper was with a walker. Andrew is one of my favorite people, and what you don't necessarily see because the photo isn't up there, but Andrew came to us. He had a brain tumor, and because of the brain tumor, he had some pretty severe physical effects. Andrew has balance issues, hence he uses the walker. He is mute, can't speak. He makes noises. He can communicate, however. He speaks ALS, not American Sign Language. His name's Andrew. He speaks Andrew Sign Language. And with that, ooh, it went away. So what occurred there, Andrew is an amazing young man, and the life lesson that you'd see on this slide, and I'll try and get it back up here in a second. However, with that particular life lesson, it's to keep your sense of humor, no matter your circumstances. And Andrew, I will tell you, even though he was dealt a pretty terrible hand, the first time he came to camp, again, because of his balance issues, he has trouble undressing himself by himself, can't shower by himself, so we had to take him down to our medical shed where they actually have a roll-in shower where you can get him in there. There's a seat in there. You help him get undressed. This is my first time doing this with him. Got him undressed, set him down in the shower, sitting down there, and with that, proceed to turn the shower on and start wetting him down, hand him the soap. He grabs the soap, starts showering himself up. And with that, and you're kind of standing there, watching him, make sure he doesn't fall over and making sure that he's safe. With that, he's sitting in the shower, and I'm standing there, and he does this. What? What you want? What? What do you want? And he just keeps going. Oh, I'm not doing that. And he's like, no, and he's making noises at you and pointing, and you're like, oh, okay, grab the soap, and you start to, lean in and get closer to him, which was all he wanted. When I tell you the smell that wafted up into my nostrils was horrific. I would swear that Andrew ate like 12 cans of beans. And as soon as I took a big whiff and was like, oh, he started cackling and howling and laughing his butt off. he can't do a traditional prank. He can't tell a joke. He can't say that to me. This was how he was pranking me. This was how he was keeping his sense of humor regardless of the circumstances that he was dealt. And so that's a life lesson that I've taken from Andrew is no matter what life deals you, what circumstances you have, make the best of it. Have fun. Find the humor in every circumstance.
Classic Andrew. So up here next to the picture we don't have of Andrew, you won't see a picture of Liz. Now she'll be the first to tell you that messing with nurses is what helps you stay sane. Now one time as she was an inpatient at Phoenix Children's Hospital, she poured apple juice into her sterile specimen container, supposed to be for her urine sample. So just as she was handing the cup to the nurse, she pulled it back and kind of looked at it. She said, "Uh-oh, that's a bit cloudy." To the nurse's horror, she drank it down, told the nurse, "Needs to be filtered one more time." Lesson from both Liz and Andrew is not to take life too seriously. Keep your sense of humor, no matter the circumstances.
So true, Bob. However, cancer can be hard to define. There's plenty of it around, but most people don't want to talk about it. A cancer diagnosis can be gross, can be funny, can be cringeworthy or awesome, depending on your perspective. Cancer and cancer treatments are all of those things.
Right? I mean, think about it. Can you imagine taking medicine that you know will promptly make you writhe, retch, and erp technicolor rainbows? There's nothing funny about that. But that's the chemotherapy experience for a lot of kids. Spending the night redistributing the smorgasbord into a plastic basin or painting a Jell-O Picasso on your bed sheets, those are not pleasant occurrences. No matter what you call them, nausea and repetitive vomiting are not fun. But Susan took that unpleasantness and she turned it into a game. Susan and her comrades in chemo competed to see who could hold out the longest before tossing a sidewalk pizza.
And that's ingenuity at its finest. That's actually turning ugly into fun. Taking a bad situation and finding humor in it is a precious talent and a beautiful art form. Now, all kids go through the self-conscious stressors of trying to fit in. It's part of growing up. We've all gone through it. Not wanting to be different is a normal worry for an adolescent. But add alopecia to a child's list of concerns, and the pressures can be staggering.
Now, what's alopecia, you may ask? It has to do with hair, namely the lack of hair. Alopecia is just a fancy medical word for hair loss. It's something that frequently accompanies chemotherapy. Now, give a child the chemo cut, and it's nearly impossible for them to not stick out. But leave it to the kids to put things in perspective. They'll tell you that your hair falling out can be monumentally tragic or a great source of fun. It depends on how you look at it.
Susan chose the latter. Losing my hair was no big deal. It was expected. And once it's gone, you can actually spray paint your head. Red, purple, blue. And believe me, when you do, people look. And that's actually the next life lesson. Always put things in perspective. A child can do that very well, and I would encourage you all to do the same. Put things in perspective.
Christy remembers being 15 and in tears as she watched the last bit of her hair fall to the floor. Her friend routinely shaved his head, and he was there with her. She says that he pulled out a big Hollywood hair wig, put it on, and pointed in the mirror. "Look, it's Sinead O'Connor and Eddie Van Halen." Now, for those of you millennials, those are musicians from way back. Instead of crying, Christy and her friend ran down the hall laughing and showed her parents. As her hair grew back, Christy said every inch was significant. Says it was like an inch further from where she'd been with cancer. By her 5-year anniversary, she donated her hair. It had grown down past her waist again. She cut off 2 feet, and then again for her 10th anniversary.
Christy was also a bit of a rebel. She remembers being stuck in the hospital on her 15th birthday awaiting diagnosis. The doctors told her she either had cancer or cat scratch disease, whatever that is. They weren't sure which, though. She told them, "I'm going down for cake. Let me know when you get it all figured out." Her obstinacy continued throughout her treatment. That is not her, by the way. She is not Elvis. But when her favorite oncologist told her not to eat pizza, she'd be sure to bring a slice to their next visit. She did miss her previously long hair and always wore a wig to school. She says many people never even knew she was ill. That is, until cheerleading tryouts. Determined not to let it get her down, Christy went from a radiation appointment straight to the tryouts. When I dumped my wig from my gymnastics routine, a lot of people thought my hair just fell off. And she laughed about that. But I'd taken it off myself, she said. She always managed to find good in a difficult situation. Christy remembers, and that's her, by the way, now that we're back to this. That's her up there on the top, okay? She remembered I was the only freshman to get out of school early, and it was pretty cool. Of course, I had to spend time getting radiation, but still, I got out early. She missed over 300 days of high school, but still managed to graduate on time with a high GPA while earning plenty of scholarships.
Jason was almost 17 when he went through chemotherapy, and then surgery, and then radiation, and then more chemotherapy. He lost all his body hair, even his eyebrows. But he'll laugh when he tells you, "I didn't have any zits." Chemotherapy kills everything, including acne. One of the few upsides to chemo. Jason had most of his gluteal muscle removed from one buttock. He'll tell you he's done everything half-assed ever since. He was hairless when he finished his Eagle Scout merit badge, and he claims to have been the only bald eagle in the state.
Now, Susan, Christy, and Jason are not the only ones with the ability to find good in a difficult situation. Far from it. Many cancer survivors echo this amazing capacity.
Let me tell you about Kelsey. That's her on the left. And why sometimes a child like her is the best mentor you could ever hope for. So I'd traded away the last of my tater tots, my lanyard, and my monkey's fist. I'd successfully amassed a collection of no less than 9 chocolate chip cookies. Not bad for a day's work. Cookies were stacked in a precarious tower of baked goodness, showed that the barter system is always alive and well at Arizona Camp Sunrise. So I beamed over my treasure, enough pirate booty to make Davy Jones drool. Meanwhile, Kelsey, one of the children I'd relieved of their cookies, she sat across from me and asked, "Uncle Bob, what kind of cancer did you have?" So sweet and so innocent and so damn direct. I froze, looking for an appropriate answer. What kind of cancer did I have? Game over. Time to fess up. I told her, "I'm sorry, Kelsey, but I didn't have cancer of any type." She took it in stride. "Oh," she said, returned to munching on a tater tot that she'd taken from my tray during our bartering. Said, "I thought we all did." I was stunned. Did I really say that? Did I say, "I'm sorry, but I didn't have cancer"? I mean, that's ridiculous. And I did say it. Although I'd never actually wished to have cancer or any other disease, more than once I found myself afflicted with cancer envy. It's kind of a peer pressure reversal. Sounds odd, cancer envy, and maybe some psych students can explain it to me later. Whatever the case, it's a real thing. Being in the presence of a true superhero like Kelsey can leave you feeling real small. Kelsey was only 10 years old, and she was tiny for her age. She was just a little angel smiling across the table at me in the most unassuming way. But trifling, juvenile, immature? No, not even close. Kelsey's a veteran of life and has experienced so much that I have not. She battled and ultimately cancer, only to sit seemingly unscathed, nibbling on a tater tot. Just like a mild-mannered Clark Kent before he goes into the phone booth, she's the epitome of modesty. And me? I'm just a tourist, cancer-adjacent at best. I'm no more than an unwitting townsperson, an expendable extra in Kelsey's blockbuster superhero movie franchise. I scanned the lodge, and I saw similar faces everywhere. Each one unique. Each child exhibited some secret authority that's missing in my own face. I saw an entire room full of superheroes, some barely surpassing my belt line. I pushed that entire tower of cookies over to Kelsey, said, "Here, these are for you. You earned them." As for me, I have a lot to accomplish before I could be so worthy.
Thanks, Bob. It's an amazing story about Kelsey, and I want to share with you another little story about someone who I consider a true superhero in every sense of the word, and who mentored me and continues to mentor me to this day. And that's this young man up here who's actually riding piggyback, not the piggyback person, but who's riding on the back. That's Sean. I'm going to apologize now if I get a little emotional while telling this. However, Sean came to us when he was in active treatment. He had a brain tumor. When he came to us, he was bald, he was frail, balance issues, all of that. It was either his first or second summer with us at Camp Sunrise, I got a call from home that my grandmother had passed. And with that, a bunch of my friends made a homemade sympathy card, and they all wanted to sign it. And Sean happened to be in the med shed at the time when they were discussing this, and just happened to overhear what had happened in the call that I had gotten. And he immediately said, "I'd like to sign Stumpy's card." He did. And what he wrote to me that day, I still have the card. I'm not going to share with you because what he wrote is just for me. But he might have been 13 at the time, it was one of the most compassionate things anyone has ever given me. And that was from a 13-year-old who was bald and frail and having his own troubles, and yet he was more concerned with how I felt than with the chemo that he was being given. We got to see Sean's cancer go into remission. This is well after that point in time, as you can see. His hair came back, his balance issues went away. Continued on to high school, joined the high school basketball team. And then, a little over 2 years ago, he and his family got the call that his brain tumor had returned. And this time it was inoperable. And he was given a terminal diagnosis. I don't know about you. I don't know how you would react if you were given that diagnosis. I can tell you for myself, I'd probably curl up into a ball in the corner and stay there for months. Not Sean. Sean decided he wanted to live life to the fullest. Traveled with his family. He was 17 years old, in high school. If you were told you had 6 months to a year to live, would you want to stay in high school? I wouldn't. I'd want to maybe go do the things that I hadn't done yet. Not Sean. Sean stayed in high school. He wanted to graduate. He wanted to hang out with his friends. He stayed on the basketball team. He continued to live life. His life, the best that he could, the way he wanted to. I'd like to tell you that he beat the odds. Unfortunately, I can't. A little over a year ago now, Sean lost his fight. Sean lost his battle with cancer. But I will be eternally grateful for the time that I got to spend with him, both at camp and outside of camp, as my wife and I, whose birthday it is today, by the way, right here, so just so you all know. Thank you for letting me do this on your birthday. The time that we got to spend with Sean and get to know his family outside of camp, we were actually able to spend time at their home with him in the weeks leading up to his passing, and in fact, even the day before he passed. And even during those times, he was more concerned about his siblings. He was more concerned about us and seeing how we were doing than about himself and what he was facing. Sean was probably one of the best mentors in how I hope to live my life moving forward. And he will continue to be a mentor to me for every day of my life.
Thank you, Stumpy. When it comes to treating cancer, there's the traditional treatments: chemotherapy, radiation, wicked drugs, additional wicked drugs to counteract the bad effects of the original wicked drugs. Then there's alternative treatments. It's holistic, religious, some just plain woo-woo. But then there's also camp alternative treatments, like Jello War. It's about 4 decades ago, on a bus ride to who knows where, campers were discussing their individual dislikes of hospital stays. Each had had more than their share of pokes and prods and insults. Many shared dislikes of missing school, missing friends, family, not being able to play outside. But one common denominator solidified. They shared a universal disdain for hospital food, particularly Jell-O. Now, you may think it odd that kids would be so impassioned against a tasty, sugary treat, but the mere mention of Jell-O caused a whole busload of groans. Now, the kids are already sick, and then they end up with this colorful gelatin on their breakfast tray, on their lunch tray, on the snack tray, on the dinner tray. They had had Jell-O beyond something they could tolerate. One camper said, "Hey, I'd just as soon throw it against the wall as eat another bite of Jell-O." Another camper agreed. He said, "Yeah, Jell-O's for throwing, not for eating." They reached an immediate agreement. Jell-O should be thrown. Now, the camp director thought it made sense and suggested, "Hey, we could have a Jell-O throwing competition." Kids said, "Yay," but then they decided, "No, we're going to throw it at each other." Bingo, Jell-O War, brought to you by and in support of every child who ever spent time in a hospital. So we've been waging Jell-O wars at camp ever since. Here's what it takes. 6 easy steps. You make a ridiculous amount of Jell-O. Generally, it's a late night event. Then you let it cool in the walk-in refrigerator until the next day. 3, you bag the Jell-O. 4, and this is important, you post a guard on the arsenal of gelatin. 5, you transport it to some remote location out in the forest. And 6, assemble the troops. We divide the campers and the staff into groups. We arm them with the sticky ammunition. Lots of anticipation running high while we explain rules and boundaries, all kinds of regulations. Technicalities out of the way, whistle blows, and all heck breaks loose. It's complete melee with just one stratagem: throw Jell-O. It's immediately clear that the rules, those were just added for effect. Even the concept of teams is quickly disintegrated. So I toss Jell-O to the left, I toss Jell-O to the right, I smear it in Stumpy's ear. It's awesome. The intimate camaraderie of covering a friend in gelatinous goo is truly exhilarating. I love everyone. They're my tribe. They're my camply. No one escapes ungelatinized. You have multicolored splotches on your shirt and your clothing, your hair and your ears. Then once all of the ammunition has been expended, it's photo time. Then it's a mass exodus toward the bathhouse for a follow-up battle for the showers. And in nearly 4 decades, those battles have been fought, clothing's been stained, and riotous laughter has infected everyone participating. It's silly, it's uninhibited, and Jello War is a tad disgusting. But it's also the most uniquely healthy war ever waged. Arizona Camp Sunrise invented Jello War, but we're all about sharing. Each and every oncology camp in the country should be hosting a Jello War, our treat. No pun intended.
Love it. I'll be honest with you. If you all have never thrown Jello at someone else, I highly encourage you this weekend to do so. It is amazing. What I want to do, though, I want to switch gears just a little bit here. I want to tell you another story about a camper who I grew extremely close to during my time at Arizona Camp Sunrise. Her name's Amelia. There she is right there above me. When she came to Arizona Camp Sunrise as a 9-year-old, she had a brain tumor, and she had been newly diagnosed about 6 months prior. At the time, she could walk, but through the tumor, as well as her treatments, were so devastating to her, it paralyzed her from the waist down. And she ended up in a wheelchair. She's still in that wheelchair today. But through the time that we spent together at Camp Sunrise, we got to know each other very, very well. We spent a lot of time together, got to know each other, played games, did various activities, and over the course of time, obviously, we're in the middle of the woods. Sometimes she'd be in a cabin where there were stairs. She'd have to go over to the bathhouse, get transported over gravel to get up to the lodge that was there for the dining hall. I was the only one she ever allowed to lift her up out of the wheelchair, carry her to where we needed to go. Someone else would carry the wheelchair, set the wheelchair down, and then I gently set Amelia down in her wheelchair. This went on for several years at every camp function. I was the only one she would let pick her up. And then there came a time, we not only do our summer programs, but we've done weekend retreats as well. And at one of the weekend retreats, several years into our relationship, I wasn't supposed to be there. Work had gotten in the way. Life happens. And it was well known that I wasn't going to be there. Amelia was told that I wasn't going to be there. As things happen, as life occurs, last minute, and when I mean last minute, I'm talking about 11:59, the clock strikes midnight. Life opened up, work changed, and I was able to come to camp. Obviously, the camp directors knew, campers did not. And so the bus pulls up. She happens to be the last one off the bus because all the kids get off, and she was going to be the last one because someone was going to have to get her. And I happily hopped up on the bus, and I'm like, Amelia, I'm here. Let me get you and pull you off the bus. And she had a big grin on her face, and it was awesome, and took her down, and they pulled her wheelchair out, and I gently set her down into her wheelchair, and we had a wonderful rest of the day into the evening. And she got tired that night at that evening's activity, and so she's like, I'm really tired. Can I go back to the cabin? And her counselor was like, yeah, we'll take you back, and I want Stumpy to, carry me. Great, no problem. And so picked her up, carried her. Her counselor had her wheelchair. We took her into the cabin, laid her down in her bunk. Counselor kind of tucked her in, got her into her sleeping bag. And I kind of just sat there on her bunk with her for a minute. And I looked at her and I said, I got to ask, this is a really cool surprise, right? You thought I wasn't coming. Were you surprised when I showed up to pick you up off the bus? God bless her. She might have been 12 years old. She grabbed me by the face, both hands on the side of my face, pulled me really close, looked at me and said, no, Stumpy, I wasn't surprised. You've always been there for me when I needed you. Out of the mouths of babes, right?
That's Amelia on the right. That's a blue beetle on the left. Someday I'll tell you about that. But just like a week at summer camp, we get short on time. And at camp, we've never had an official graduation ceremony. A child who has or has had cancer can attend camp until they're 16, but then they age out. There's plenty of hugs, tears, signing of yearbooks, exchanging of phone numbers, but there's no official ceremony. And maybe that should change. Now, it's only hypothetical at this point, but I say we should do it. Of course, if we're having an imaginary graduation ceremony, we need to have an imaginary commencement speaker. That'll be me. After all, I'm the one imagining. So here we go. Good afternoon. My name is Uncle Bob. Although I've not actually graduated from Arizona Camp Sunrise or any other camp, I'm speaking to you today because I called first dibbies. Full disclosure, this is my first and likely last commencement speech, so please bear with me. Camp Sunrise campers, as I look out over your smiling faces, I wish I could be a teenager all over again. I think I'd screw up my life in completely different ways this time. Now, traditionally, commencement speech contains heartfelt advice from some OG. A quality commencement speech also needs a story, which serves as an allegory or a metaphor for your accomplishments and your path forward, right? So here we go. So these two young fish were swimming along, and an old guy fish swam up to them and asked, "How's the water, kids?" As the young fish swam on, they looked at each other quizzically, and then they ran right into a wall. In unison, they said, "Damn." Okay, so by the look on some of your faces, I see you may be left wondering how that story was an allegory or even useful in any way. And you're correct in wondering. It made no sense. It was pointless, just like a whole lot of other things in life. For instance, we wouldn't even be here today if you hadn't drawn the cancer card. What's the sense in that? I really do not know. You have faced down a devastating illness, suffered hard truths early in life. You battled horrors that most of us can scarcely imagine. And all of that brought you here to Arizona Camp Sunrise, and for that, I'm glad. Now, sure, your parents, your brothers and sisters, extended family, friends, doctors, nurses, all of them played a role in you being here. But most of all, more than anything else, you had yourselves. You had whatever it is inside you that I've tried to learn and to share with others. Whatever it is, it's your thing. And that's why you're here today. It's why you'll go on to do amazing things with the rest of your lives, and it's why you will change the world for the better. You've already changed my life, and now it's time to share yourselves with the world at large. And yeah, the world is large, but it's small compared to your willpower. The world's minuscule compared to your tenacity, and the world is itty-bitty microscopic compared to your drive, your love, your beauty, and your strength. Face it, us OGs, we haven't done such a good job with the world. Now it's your turn. We're hoping that you can fix things. In lieu of handing out unsolicited advice and lame platitudes, let me just say how genuinely fortunate I am. I'm fortunate to have been raised by you, the children of Arizona Camp Sunrise. I say that wholeheartedly. You raised my consciousness, you raised my awareness, you raised my values, and you raised my desire to be someone who matters in this challenging world, to be someone like all of you. Now, you've already accomplished something huge and tangible and amazing. Now your mission is to continue being the person you already are, a person the rest of us can learn from. Keep being the you are right now, and don't let anyone else change that. Congratulations, graduating class of Arizona Camp Sunrise. To be clear, I'm not congratulating you on surviving your cancer. I'm congratulating you on being amazing and inspirational. Congratulating you on being superheroes and mentors, sharing your unique perspective on life and how to live it. I'm congratulating you on being you. Graduating class of Arizona Camp Sunrise, wish you all the love in the world. Now get out there and share yourself. Please cue the pomp and circumstance march.
And with that, we'd like to thank you all for spending your evening with us to learn more about Arizona Camp Sunrise and how the amazing children we've had the privilege of getting to know over the years have made a difference in our lives. Just as we know their words of wisdom that we shared with you tonight, as well as the life lessons they provided, can make a difference in yours.